After being stuck in the terrible, horrifying, Amazing Spider-Man film universe over at Sony,
Sorry.
Spider-Man finally swung over to the Marvel Cinematic Universe last year with Captain America: Civil War. One bomb of a Netflix show aside, it seems like Marvel Studios can do no wrong. However, if Marvel pulls from the wrong source material for their Spider-Man films, they could easily ruin the wall crawler. Marvel, please don't put these on the big screen. If you want to see more videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to CBR and keep your notification senses tingling.
Of Spider-Man.
Robot parents. In the last film series, we spent a lot of time invested in Peter Parker's parents. All of those flashbacks and references to Peter's dad being an incredible scientist paid off with a secret subway train. As weird as that was, it could have been much worse and much weirder. The 90s were a bad time for Spider-Man. Be prepared to hear that a lot. The general darkening of the comic book industry was not kind to Peter Parker, and this story is Exhibit A of that. In Amazing Spider-Man 365, Peter returns home after battling the Lizard to come face to face with his supposedly dead parents. Peter, Mary Jane, and Aunt May are all skeptical at first, which is a healthy attitude to have if you live in the Marvel Universe. But they eventually come to welcome Richard and Mary Parker back into their lives. Bad move, Spidey. As it turns out, they're not his parents at all, but robots. After a fight ensues where Peter drops the horrendously dumb "how can I fight my own father" line, Peter discovers that this was all a plot by Harry Osborn from Beyond the Grave to mess with him. It's official. All of Spidey's friends and family hate him. Spider-Man gives birth to himself. No, my friends, no, that is not a typo. We really wish it was. Back when Sony wasn't royally messing up Spider-Man's movies, they actually put out the awesome Spider-Man 2. You know, the one where Peter loses his powers for no reason? Okay, it wasn't always awesome. Anywho, in 2004, Marvel Comics decided it was high time to give Spider-Man something fans never really wanted, but in theory sounded relatively benign: organic web shooters. Just like the movies. One would think that Marvel could just explain that this was simply Peter's powers advancing and growing stronger with age, but they felt that they had a better story to tell. One that involves a new villain who wants to mate with Spidey and turn him into a giant spider. But wait, it gets better. Once Peter transforms and dies shortly after, a new being bursts out from the spider carcass, with that person being Peter Parker. No, this isn't a clone, trust us, we'll get to that, but the genuine Peter who just gave birth to himself from his own death body. Can we get any arachnologists on this? Anyone? So after all that, Peter defeats the new villain easily with his new organic webbing powers and ability to telepathically speak to insects. Wow, that's a whole lot of nonsense just to get organic webbing. All you had to do in the video game based off the first movie was put in a cheat code, but yeah, sure, this works too. 6 Arms of Spider-Man, the oldest story to make our list. This was somehow supposed to be the dramatic 100th issue of Amazing Spider-Man back in 1971. Written by Stan Lee, you would expect something amazing to honor Lee's greatest creation. What we got instead was this drivel. After contemplating his future with girlfriend Gwen Stacy, Peter decides that there's no way that he could keep his identity as Spider-Man a secret while also being married to her. He does the only sensible thing and ingests an untested serum designed to take away his superpowers. Like most things in Spidey's life, this immediately comes back to bite him in the butt, as the serum didn't take away his powers, but actually gave him 4 extra arms. Now, we know this looks bad, but come on! Peter can now fulfill his fantasy of cosplaying Goro from Mortal Kombat. Wait, Goro only has 4 arms, not 6, damn it! As if this story couldn't get any more bizarre, the villain of this 3-issue story emerges, and it's a bloody vampire. Despite outnumbering new villain Morbius in the limb department, Spidey almost dies at the hand of Morbius and has to be saved by Kurt Connors in lizard form. If this story was meant to be just a random tale from one of Spidey's lesser-known books, that'd be okay. However, the fact that this was the storyline for his 100-issue anniversary is baffling. Put simply, Spider-Man and vampires do not mix. Leave the creatures of the night to Blade next time, Peter. Maximum suckage. Look, everyone, we have to talk about Carnage. This product of the 1990s excess of blood and extremeness may be a fan favorite, but he's been in some really awful comics. None of them, though, has been as mindless and nonsensical as the jumbled mess called Maximum Carnage. This 1993 storyline features a bunch of D-list heroes and villains all fighting for panel space as Carnage and his cronies tear up New York City.
Hey guys, you ever seen that really old movie? Empire Strikes Back!
The plot is as bare bones as you can get, with the same thing happening over 14 issues. Carnage and his family show up at a location, and then Spidey, Venom, and their allies get their butts handed to them. Rinse, lather, repeat. There are numerous stupid elements with this story. The X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Avengers are all conveniently unavailable, or just couldn't care to help Spidey save New York from falling into madness. Instead of citizens falling into chaos from a collapse of social order, it's instead from a psychic virus courtesy of Carnage's girlfriend Shriek. The best bit is how the villains are defeated. A gun that fires, wait for it, positive emotions at the evildoers, which in turn weakens them. Everyone is incompetent in this story. Spider-Man gets wrecked every fight. Venom gets captured by Carnage while his team fails to kill a single hero. For something promised to be violent and edgy, this story is just incredibly childish.
You're wrong. You think you're right. It makes you dangerous.
Killing Mary Jane with his... For the most part, we stuck to stories that involve Marvel's 616 universe, aka the one where 99% of Marvel titles take place. However, this story from an alternate reality involving Spidey is so bonkers that we had to include it. The story takes place in the year 2036, where New York City has been under the rule of a mayor who's traded away all freedom for security under the web system. His assistant, Edward Sachs, is actually Venom in disguise who wants to take over New York with an army of symbiotes. Want weirder? How about Spider-Man talking to hallucinations of his dead wife Mary Jane? Why is his wife dead, you might ask? Well, apparently, after all the years of being with Peter, Mary Jane contracted cancer from Spider-Man's radioactive nature and died. This is revealed when Peter goes to her gravesite and cradles her body as the tentacles of Doc Ock drag her and Peter into MJ's grave. This dark, twisted, and bizarre alternate universe story tries so hard to be Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, but instead turns out to be a dark comedy. Despite some similarities between the two, Spider-Man is not Batman and shouldn't be placed in a book that's ripped off from a Batman story. Marvel, do the right thing and keep this in the grave.
Alright, sorry, my bad.
Madam Web need not apply. Out of all the superheroes in the Marvel Universe, Peter Parker has held on to his secret identity harder than most. The number of people who know Peter Parker as Spider-Man should be a reserved list, and this senior psychic should not be on that list. Introduced in 1980's Amazing Spider-Man number 210, Madam Web is some kind of supposedly all-knowing psychic who helps Spider-Man track down bad guys. Spidey having a psychic old lady in a special chair keeping her alive doesn't ring true to the Spider-Man mythos. After all, if Marvel wanted Spidey to have an old lady with psychic powers to help him out, just give Aunt May superpowers. She did take out Chameleon without any powers once, so Aunt May's earned a reward by now. Some of us have some halfway decent memories of Madam Web thanks to the Spider-Man cartoon of the 1990s, but don't let your nostalgia fool you. Web was one of the weakest parts of that show, so just write it down so you don't forget. Madam Web is terrible, and we'd be surprised if you're waiting eagerly for her cinematic debut. Introducing Madam Web into the MCU would just give Spidey another kind of higher authority figure that he doesn't need.
You owe your aunt an apology. Big time.
Attack of the Clones. You all knew this was going to be on the list. One of the most reviled and messy storylines in comic book history, the Clone Saga is a 2-year arc that encompassed all 5 Spider-Man books. While there are admittedly some good stories in those 2 years, there's far too much garbage to justify calling the saga good. Perhaps the worst arc of the saga comes from Maximum Clonage. Side note, if your story has the word maximum in the title, avoid it like the plague. Back to clones. This 6-issue story just ruins everything we love about Spider-Man. His unbreakable will? Spidey opens up the story by teaming up with the villain Jackal in order to run away from his actions in the previous issue. Those actions being accidentally hitting Mary Jane. See, Petey was acting a little crazy from finding out that he was a clone, so he may have accidentally struck his wife who was trying to restrain him. Also, while most Spidey stories are deeply personal and relatively grounded, this one is anything but, featuring guest appearances from the Punisher, the New Warriors, and the Jackal, who wants to replace the entire global population with clones for reasons. At this point of the Clone Saga, no less than 3 Spider-Man clones had been introduced, but in this story, that number jumps up into hundreds as the Jackal unleashes an army of them on our heroes. Stop us when this sounds stupid. Oh, it was stupid after Spidey teamed up with a villain? Okay then, moving on.
Big fan of Spider-Man.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. Just
Magic Goblin. Oh my god, can we please keep Magic and Spider-Man as far apart as we can? Seriously, there's never been any instance where this has ended well. Case in point, this 1998 monstrosity. Designed to cap off Volume 1 of the legendary Amazing Spider-Man book after more than 35 years in print, this story is an insult to Spidey fans all over the world. Look, we all know that Norman Osborn is crazy. Any kind of guy with red cornrows in his 40s is not right in the head. But this plan just doesn't make a lick of sense. In this story, Osborn takes part in an ancient ritual where 5 people each pick a relic that grants either knowledge, madness, power, death, or immortality. Long, stupid story short, Osborn thinks he draws power, beats the snot out of Spidey, and unmasks him in front of all New York. Until, plot twist, Osborn actually drew madness, and his victory over Peter was imagined in his head. We never see the real fight of these arch rivals. And Norman's plan of melting the human race's DNA down to basics so that he could recreate it in his own image. What happened to getting revenge on Spider-Man and being super rich, eh, Osborn? For thrashing Spidey's most famous adversary, this story should never see the light of day again.
I'm really sorry. What?
Selling Out to Satan, considered by superhero fans to be one of the most controversial and reviled stories in comic book history, One More Day is a wretched, vile pile of garbage that changed Spider-Man comics forever. Some would argue that this 2007 storyline has damaged the books to this day, in fact. But come on, how bad can it be? Well, to truly understand how dumb it is, we need some backstory. During Civil War, beloved, sweet Aunt May was shot by a sniper who was aiming for Peter. Being the person he is, Peter blames himself for what happened and stops at nothing to get his aunt back, and we do mean nothing. After contacting all the super scientists and sorcerers he knows of in the Marvel Universe, they all end up telling him the same thing. They can't save May from a bullet wound. In a world where Reed Richards opens up portals to different dimensions on a daily basis, apparently healing bullet wounds is too much of a strain on these characters' intellects. Seeing how miserable he is, Mephisto, essentially Marvel's Satan, cuts a deal with Spidey that would save his aunt's life, for a cost. His marriage to Mary Jane Watson would be erased from history, and the two would never get back together. Being the fool he has been in this entire storyline, Peter ditches a lifetime of happiness with Mary Jane in exchange for the life of his constantly dying aunt. Tip for Spidey: if you see the devil next time, run away.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude!
Aunt May comes back from the dead. Okay, hear us out here. There is potential that Marissa Tomei as Aunt May is a big fake out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Don't believe us? Well, take a gander at this plot point from 1998. In the final chapter storyline of 1998, we learn from an evil hospital worker who stole Peter and Mary Jane's child away from them that May is alive. Naturally, everyone assumes that it's the baby girl, as Aunt May had died a touching death in the classic Amazing Spider-Man number 400. There was absolutely no way that Marvel would thrash that story, right? Right? But of course they did. After Peter fights off the Green Goblin en route to an old Osborn cabin, Spidey thinks he's gonna finally get his child back. Shortly after entering the house, he's bashed over the head with a vase. Ignoring the fact that his spider senses should have warned him, Spidey turns around and sees not Baby May, but Aunt May. Yup, that Aunt May who died years ago was actually a genetically altered actress that Osborn had impersonate Aunt May to mess with Peter's head. Don't you feel stupid for caring about issue 400 now? So, what could we have learned from this? Well, when you stroll into theaters to watch Spider-Man Homecoming, don't be too shocked if Tomei bashes Tom Holland over the head with a vase, says psych, and reveals herself to actually be Rosemary Harris, the Aunt May from the Sam Raimi films. Okay, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
There's only one who can stop us.
Well, that's it for our list. Are there any Spider-Man stories that you think should be kept away from the silver screen? We truly hope that none of those stories greet us when we sit down with our popcorn in the theater, as it might seriously ruin the franchise to be. Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to CBR for more awesome content. Until next time, true believers.